Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for allocating your time on our forum. We are here today to listen about the definition of a contract and the elements of a contract. Before we start, I would like to explain a bit about a contract. What is a contract? A contract is an agreement which recognizes and governs the rights and duties of the parties of to the agreement. A contract is legally enforceable because it meets the requirements and approval of the law. There are several basic elements that is required for the agreement to be a legally enforceable contract. Therefore, we are proud to be here today to share and gain knowledge on what are the essential elements that are needed to make a valid contract. I would like to introduce our panel for today's forum. On my right is our first panel, Miss FLORA LEEZA ANAK WELINO, and on my left is our second panel, Miss NURFARAHANIM BINTI JAMURI, and beside her is our third panel, Muhammad ZHAFRIE bin ZULFRIN. They will be explaining about the elements of a contract. Let us start with our first panel, Miss FLORA LEEZA. Can you describe and elaborate one of the elements?
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. I would like to explain one of element of contract, which is offer. Element of an offer include the offer and acceptance. All parties must be competent when it comes to giving and accepting the offer. The information discussed must be lawful and be rooted in mutuality of agreement and obligation. An offer entails a promise that condition upon certain conditions. First, any offer should entail a statement of current intent entering an agreement under the following. Next, furthermore, a proposal establishes condition. And second, conveying offer the offer and the offeree consideration if any components remain missing, there is no basis to create an agreement. For the communication, the person who makes the offer, which is the offerer, should communicate the offer to any person who may accept or reject. Further, the offerer must communicate the offer by any means, whether that's written or orally. Thank you for the offer element.
Thank you to our first panel for the useful information about the elements in a contract, which is offer. We can agree that offer is one of the elements that is needed in a contract. Next, I would like to ask our second panel, Ms. Farah. Can you explain another element in a contract?
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. Yes, I can. Another element of valid contract is acceptance. What is acceptance? Acceptance means the offeree to whom the offer is made agrees to accept the offer made by the offerer. The acceptance made by the offeree must satisfy certain conditions. The conditions are: first, acceptance must be absolute and unqualified, means that the acceptance must be exactly on the same terms as offer without any modification. Second, acceptance must be communicated in some usual and reasonable manner. It is according to Section 7, Clause B to Contract Act. The general rule is that the acceptance must be communicated to the offerer. This is important because the promiser can always revoke or cancel his offer before there is an acceptance but not Ladies and gentlemen, silent is not an acceptance. I repeat, silent is not an acceptance. The offerer may not put any condition in his offer that the silence of the offeree without giving any positive acceptance amount to an acceptance. It is because the general rule is that acceptance must be communicated to the offerer. The acceptance will only be valid if there is a positive conduct signifying the acceptance. Generally, an acceptance also will be either oral or written, like an offer. Thus, an acceptance can be expressed or implied. So, another information I will tell is those who accepting the proposal known as a promisee, acceptor, or offeree. The conclusion, a proposal when accepted, it become a promise. That's all from me. Back to you, Ms. Moderator.
Thank you to our second panel for the useful information about elements of a contract, that is acceptance. Now, to our third panel, can you tell us what is the other elements of a contract?
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. Today, I will talk about certainty of the terms. Certainty is a legal requirement of a valid offer to contract that it must be precise and definite in order to be subject to acceptance. It is very important that the terms of an agreement must be certain because Section 30 of the Contracts Act provides that any agreement, the meaning which is not certain or capable of being met, certain or void. For example, an agreement between A and B to sell 100 tons of oil without any indication as to the kind of oil was intended is void for uncertainty. However, if there is any indication as to the kind of oil, then the agreement is valid. Ladies and gentlemen, in Kerupan Chetty vs. Suah Tiam 1916, the contract was declared void as the requirement certainty was not met when the parties agrees upon the granting of lease at 35 ringgit Malaysia per month for as long as he likes, which carries uncertain definition. That's all for me. Back to Ms. Moderator.
To our third panel, Mr. Muhammad ZHAFRIE.
Excuse me, Ms. Moderator.
Yes.
I would like to provide additional information on another element of valid contract.
Sure. Go on.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, consideration is also the element of valid contract. Referring to Section 2, Clause D of Contract Act, consideration is something which has a value in the eyes of law and it becomes the basis of the contract. It is a price which is paid by one party in return to a promise. So it means merely the price in one party. It is a price which is paid by one party in return to a promise. So it means merely the price in a bargain. The price need to be not to be money, but must have a monetary value. According to Section 26 of Contract Act, an agreement without consideration is void. So any contract without consideration is invalid and unenforceable. No party could be bound to such contract. Other than that, Section 24 of Contract Act lists out the circumstances when the consideration or object like purpose of an agreement is unlawful. So every agreement of which the object or consideration is unlawful is void. Lastly, natural law or an affection is a valid consideration. In other words, an agreement made on account of natural love and affection will be held to be binding in Malaysia if the requirement of Section 26 Clause A are present, such as it is expressed in writing and it is registered. That's all from me. Back to you, Ms. Moderator.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Miss Moderator. I also would like to add another information on element of valid contract.
Sure.
Fairness and audience. Capacity is another element of valid contract. Capacity is refers to minors who don't have the capacity to create a contract. In most states, this refers to those who are under the age of 18. Every person is free to enter into a contract as long as he is competent or having the capacity to contract. A minor who signs a contract can void it or honor the deal, but there are few exceptions. Minors can void a contract for items that are considered necessities such as clothing, food, and lodging. A minor can only void a contract due to lack of capacity when they are underage. When they turn 18 years old and don't void the contract, it can't be voided any longer. For example, Sin is 70 years old, is a snowboarder, signed a long-term endorsement agreement for sportswear. He endorsed the products and deposit his compensation for the endorsements for several years. At age 19, he decides he wants to void the agreement to take a better endorsement deal. He claimed he lacked capacity when he signed the deal at 17 years old. A court probably will not permit Sin to now void the agreement. In Section 10, Clause 1 provides that all agreements are contract if they are made by free consent of the parties competent to contract. That's all from me. Back to Ms. Moderator.
Thank you to our third panel for the elaboration on the elements of the contract. But there is one more element that I would like to add on in this forum. The elements of the contract, one of the elements in the contract is free consent. Free consent can be defined as a contract that is made by the mutual agreement between the parties out of their own free will. According to Section 13, it is said that there must be meeting of minds as to the nature and scope of the contract, meaning to say that if the agreement is not achieved by the free consent of one or both of the parties, then there is no consensus ad idem or meeting of the minds. Such situation may arise where there are unequal bargaining powers. According to Section 14, consent is said to be free where it is not caused by caution, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, and mistake. If one of the factors which are mentioned under Section 14 exists in the agreement, the consent is said to have been given without freely and voluntarily. Therefore, the contract may become void or voidable. That is the elaboration on free consent. Ladies and gentlemen, we have almost come to the end of our forum. Before we end this forum, I would like to ask our first panel, what can you conclude from these elements of contract?
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. Thank you, Ms. Moderator. I would like to conclude for this element of contract is, although in the strict sense of the word, the above mentioned, although in the the above-mentioned scenarios can constitute an agreement between the parties. They would not be regarded as actionable in the law of contract because this agreement lack the required characteristic in the law. An enforceable agreement will require the following elements to be in place and be proven. The case can be taken to court for this element, such as offer, acceptance, consideration, certainty, capacity, and intention. Thank you.
Thank you to our first panel. We have come to the end of our forum. Thank you for listening, and we hope the audience can get information from our forum.
Oh, kami interrupt.
Ay,